Many families and parents are feeling overwhelmed, and there is a sense of people wanting to trade chaos for calm. Wouldn't we love to all do that? As we move into spring, the season of renewal, we speak to our creative parenting expert, Nikki Bush, about the trend towards minimalistic parenting. Oh, were it that easy, Nikki? I mean, life is crazy. Does it have to be crazy? Is there a natural desire for this to happen? Are we moving in that way in all, I think, levels of life? What's going on in the world at the moment? Is it just crazy? Is it chaos? Or can we live a simpler life?
Well, I think both you and I are sitting in that situation of going, stop the world, I want to get off. And there was this lovely quote by Danae Barahon, who is a family wellness expert. She says, overwhelm is not a life sentence, it's a choice. And I think sometimes we are so on that treadmill, we're so close against that window pane that we lose our perspective. Yeah. And I think spring is a nice time to kind of take a few steps backwards. And I mean, just for my own life, we've been doing some decluttering and chucking out stuff. When you've lived in the same place for a long time, you get overwhelmed just with stuff, let alone the busyness of life. So one does need to, every now and again, just take a little look, a step back and say what needs to give, because we actually can't keep doing everything all of the time.
Take a breath. Why do we feel overwhelmed? What is actually happening within us and within that dynamic internally and within a living space that gets us to feel overwhelmed? What is actually going on?
Well, we're on a treadmill, and I think once you add children into the mix, you're not just looking after yourself.
You're looking after
the... It's a juggle. It absolutely is a juggle. And everybody has different demands at different times, and obviously you've got to make sure that the basics are actually covered. So, you know, feeding your family, earning the money to afford your family, you know, all these things they're not without their stresses, that's for sure. But I think sometimes we also buy into what society is demanding as opposed to setting our own agenda. And I think that's probably the message of this conversation this morning, is what do you value and what's important to you? And are you comparing yourself to your best friend and your neighbours and every Tom, Dick and Harry and saying, Instagram, our life must look like that? Or are you actually investigating how life feels for you? Because if life is feeling hideous and that you're just doing this all the time, you've got to step back and say, what do we need to take out of this mix? Is it possible to take anything out, or can we reschedule or reprioritize so that maybe family remains the central core, the value that we commit to? Because remember that family is where hope lives for children. If we get so busy that family life disintegrates, what are we giving them? What is that thing that is their mainstay, that gives them that support and that stability?
Inspires them. Just very quickly, though, obviously business is important in my life. The kids need new shoes.
Yes.
You've got to be working. How do you, in a concrete way, prioritize family ahead of business?
Well, children don't mind if we work, and they don't mind if we're busy. But when we're with them, they want more of our happiness and less of our stress. So it's actually learning how to be in the moment when we're with them, how to leave work at the door, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes. And this is that state of mindfulness and presence, which is quite tricky. It is very tricky, and it's probably the biggest 21st century challenge for busy parents.
But there is an opportunity in that, and I have a feeling that with the physical opportunity to declutter our lives and simplify, there is an emotional opportunity within that as well. And we're going to get into exactly how we can declutter the emotional relationship we have with our child and delve a little deeper into that. Stay tuned. A very important discussion on so many levels.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
So we now continue our discussion around needing to de-stress, declutter our lives and minimalize our lives, remove the chaos and bring in a little simplicity. Nikki Bush has got some absolute gems in this regard, and I can see that you're on this path yourself. We're all on a journey. We haven't quite arrived there yet, but this is obviously an area where you try to apply a lot of what you are talking about and putting out there into the market as well. I know one of our biggest issues that we have in trying to create a more simplistic life is that we've got this constant clutter, messaging, marketing, fast food, social media. We are being bombarded by these messages all the time. How much of an effect does this clutter have on our children? How do we combat that?
So gratitude, I think, is an important thing, is that every day to be grateful for what you have and to get rid of what you don't need. I mean, things pile up and pile up. You've got kids who outgrow their clothes, their toys, and they gather dust. And it's so refreshing to actually sort these things out with your children and to give away. It's a wonderful feeling to be able to help others with stuff you no longer need. That's a good thing. And then when it comes to consumerism, you mentioned that constant marketing, that barrage of buy me, buy me, buy me. Some families who are decluttering and going for the more simplistic lifestyle, and this is a very conscious effort, they prefer to shop, for example, at markets, at organic markets on the weekend. It becomes a family thing to go and do the slow life. You know, it's an experience, do the slow life thing, as opposed to buying into the big retail environments. This is a conscious choice. Some families want to buy organic, eat organic. That is also quite demanding, actually, and that's almost a lifestyle. And
financially, it can require a shift. Yes, there is an end result that could benefit you, but it's difficult for the majority of South African families to do that.
Sure. And then let's look at technology. You know, when we're constantly plugged into devices, they demand our time and attention all the time. I must respond to the SMSs, the WhatsApps, the emails. And eventually you feel like you're in a push-me-pull-you situation where there's never no demand. And we also need to say this time is sacred family time. We are going to have no devices over dinner. Stop. Let that humming stop around you and just experience being together with no demand. And I think if we can do that for a few minutes every day, where we can just engage with each other and really tune in, you know, that real connection. The minute you have a television on in the background while you're eating, for example, it takes away from the number of words that you actually speak to each other, even if you're not actually watching it. And children, if you put them in an environment where there is no Wi-Fi, just for a weekend, they get to experience what it means to not be on. And they go, wow, this feels quite different. You know, they're actually quite aware that there's no demand for response. And they can just be in the moment.
I think a great way to do this from our own experience and looking back is to get outdoors.
Yes.
Just to experience nature where everything, your environment is shifting by the second, but there's something so stimulating and rewarding about that.
Also that sense of space, that wide open space, because when we say we feel overwhelmed, we're almost feeling boxed in.
Claustrophobic,
You're feeling caged, and it's to work out what are the sources of that stress that makes you feel caged. And can you get rid of that stress? Or, as you say, go out into the open spaces, wide open air. In fact, I took myself to gym the other day after a really, really stressful day. In fact, I hadn't been to gym for a week because I'd been on a road show speaking all over the country.
It's no good.
And it was such a revelation that just taking myself into the exercise space, like people who run experience this.
Just a little reset,
And it was a reset button, and I felt so much calmer afterwards.
It's amazing, and you're looking to change everything else, your financial situation, all these things to make yourself feel happier, and all you need to do was run for half an hour. The answers are there. Thank you so much, Nikki. I think it just involves us as parents being conscious about the choices that we make. You're not a slave to your life. You are the master of your own life and your destiny and your child's. So make it a choice to get out there and experience more. Just free up your own self and your life.